Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second weekend of the SABF. I'll just wait a minute for more people to join. Remember, for the Spanish speaking people, that in Discord we have translators. Para los que hablan solo español, tenemos traductores en Discord. No se olviden. And first of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this talk, Coster. Thank you much. And without you, this wouldn't be possible. And well, I'll present you Jake. Thank you very much for being here. And well, Jakob Gearheard has a 25-year career working for social sustainability in executive leadership positions in the private sector, non-profits, and government. He's the principal at TrimTabs Consulting Inc., a consulting organization dedicated to building a more equitable, sustainable, and inclusive world. His leadership has been recognized through several awards, including the 2012 Prime Minister's Award for Social Innovation, 2011 Tides Canada Top 10 Best Charities in Canada, among others. Is that okay?
Sounds too good, actually. Thank you.
So, well, we are 54 people here, so I think that you can start your presentation. I'll head myself, and anything you need, I'll be right here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ignacio. Muchas gracias. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be asked to speak, to present at the South American Business Forum. So thank you. I will get my presentation. Just give me a second. Okay. Oh, that was the end. Hold on. We're supposed to see that yet. Okay. All right. So my presentation is about how every step counts. It's about social impact, and it's about how to change the world one step at a time. This is my story. And at the end, I'll give you a recipe for how to change the world for the better. So stay tuned. This is me and my mom when I'm 5 years old. And this is actually like all of my memories of growing up and being young were of camping and being on the land with my parents. They were obsessed about being in nature. And thanks to them, I'm also obsessed about being in nature and have really learned the power of nature, the healing power of nature. So just as an example of how obsessed my parents were and how much they ingrained this into me, my mom, when she was 6 months pregnant, climbed Mount Rainier, which is one of the highest mountains in North America. So, and at age 73, my dad is 73, not me. At age 73, I still can't keep up with my dad in the mountains. So skip forward to 1995. I'm 20-something years old. And another sort of obsession appears in my life, and that is social justice. So I got very interested in social justice, or to be more precise, social injustice. And I also got interested in Spanish. So I went to Guatemala. I spent about 4 months in Guatemala. I learned Spanish in one of these intense sort of like Spanish schools. And part of the day, half the day was learning Spanish, and then the other half of the day was learning all about all of the social injustices that were happening at the time in Guatemala and throughout Central America. So needless to say, when I came back to Seattle, where I'm originally from, I was even more obsessed with social justice, and I needed to do something about it. So I joined this organization as a volunteer called Casa Latina. And when I was working for Casa Latina, we worked with homeless Latino immigrants in Seattle, and 90-something% of the people that I worked with were undocumented. So this is a part of the population that is very, very marginalized, very difficult to access services. There's no safety net. And so I was an advocate worker. I taught English as a second language, but I also helped connect the people that I worked with, the homeless Latino population, to services like health services, for example. I also taught some small business courses and did a bunch of things for Green Guatemala, or not Green Guatemala, for Casa Latina. So you're wondering right now what this has to do with nature and how I began the story and everything. Well, stay tuned and I'll tell you. So while I was working for Casa Latina, my best friend, lifelong friend, also obsessed with camping and nature, and also obsessed with learning Spanish, and also obsessed with social justice, decided to go to Peru and volunteer for this organization in Peru called the Mountain Institute. While he was working at the Mountain Institute, he was doing conservation and development projects with Highland, Indigenous, and Campesino groups, communities. And while he was doing that, he was sending me pictures just like the one that you're watching, just like the one that you see, of these like beautiful mountains. And within a year, I had packed my bags and I was down there working with him. I was a volunteer. They paid me a stipend, but I ended up working for the next about 3.5 years for the Mountain Institute, first in Peru, then in Ecuador, then in Colombia, working on integrated conservation and development projects and indigenous-led land use planning. And while I was doing that, I was junior. I wasn't really getting paid, like they were feeding me, but I was working with these people who, this was their career, like they were mid-career, earning good money, doing this kind of work. And I was like, oh my God, like I need to pinch myself. I'm like living the dream. Now I just need to figure out how to get paid to do this. And so I was asking all of them, like, what did you do? Like, what did you study? How do you get into this kind of like job? And a lot of them said that they were geographers. So me, not knowing really anything about geography, except for it has to do with maps and stuff, I decided, well, I'm gonna go back to school and study geography. So I went back to graduate school. At graduate school, and my whole intention was to get my master's degree and then go back and continue to work in Ecuador and Peru and Colombia and do the same kind of work that I was doing. But while I was at graduate school, I met a bunch of colleagues who were doing work in the Eastern Canadian Arctic, in Baffin Island, and also in Greenland. And I became super interested in that part of the world. And that brings me to my third sort of obsession, which is travel. So we have these three things. We have social justice, we have nature, and we have travel. So I decided that I was going to go and check out the Arctic. And so I got online, tried to find a place where I could work, and I found an organization in a tiny community called Clyde River. It's where you see the star, and it's on Baffin Island. That island there is Baffin Island, and I applied to work for this organization called Ilisaqsivik Society. And from what I could tell online, Ilisaqs, and through my interviewing process, is that Ilisaqsivik Society was a community development organization very similar to the community development and conservation organizations that I was working for already down in Peru and Ecuador. Just the geography is slightly different, as you can see. So I got the job. I got on a plane. I flew for literally 6.5 hours over landscape that looked just like this. There I am flying. And I landed in Clyde River. So imagine 6.5 hours, see nothing but white snow and ice below. And then all of a sudden there's this tiny little town called Clyde River, and I'm landing now, and it's dark. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. but it's completely dark because it's above the Arctic Circle, so it's 24-hour darkness in the winter time. I landed at the airport, tiny airport, gravel runway, and somebody from the organization where I was going to work had come to pick me up. They're dressed in like a million layers. They look like the Michelin Man, except for it was a woman. Fur all around their parka. And they picked me up in a skidoo. And I'm like totally not dressed for this. It's minus 30 something. And drove me back to the center where I was going to be working, where everybody was waiting for me, all the board of directors, all of the staff, some of the community members were there, all there with a big feast welcoming me. And the big feast was cardboard on the floor with big hunks of raw caribou, raw whale, raw walrus, raw seal, raw polar bear. And I was handed a knife and expected to just go kneel down with everyone else and just carve off some hunks of raw meat and eat it, which all sounds crazy. And it was crazy for me. It was surreal for the first entire year. All of this was surreal for me, but eventually I got used to it and now I crave it. I love it. But like it was, for that first year, it was literally a new world for me. Walking on the ocean, the whole part in front of the community there that you can see, that's all ocean. It's all sea ice, right? And it's sea ice for 9 months of the year. So while I was there that first year, apart from just like being blown away at how different it was and everything, and how exotic it was at that time for me, I was also learning about Inuit, and I was learning about the organization where I was going to be working. And what I learned, so this community, I don't know if I already said this, but this community is 99% Inuit. They speak Inuktitut, which is the language. Some of the younger people speak both Inuktitut and English, but most of the older people, older than 40, speak only Inuktitut. It's part of Canada, and so they've been part of Canada since Canada started, became a country, but they were really forgotten about for most of Canada's history until just recently, really in the 1950s, when all of a sudden Canada realized that they had all of these people living up in the north that were nomadic, and they brought them into this. They decided that they needed to bring them into communities and make them into Canadians, right? And so I'm not going to go into this history, but it's tragic and it's man-made, and it's basically a history of colonization that happened within the last 2 generations. So there are people in Clyde River that I know and work with who grew up in an igloo. They literally grew up on the land, living a nomadic lifestyle, and didn't move into a community until they were like young adults. If you want to know more about this history, you can look up online. You can look up things like residential schools and Canada, or you can look up dog slaughter and Inuit, or you can look up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Those are 3 sources of information about this epic of Canadian history that not very many people, even in Canada, know about. But the impact of it was a lot of intergenerational trauma that continues to exist today. So, and that leads to a lot of addiction, and a lot of abuse, and also a very high suicide rate. In fact, the suicide rate in Nunavut is 10 times higher than the suicide rate in the rest of Canada. So, oh, there's my plane again. So one of the programs that I worked on at this organization, I was the executive director of the organization. They had between 70 and 100 people working at the organization, depending on how many projects that they had going at once. But one of the main projects is a counseling project. A lot of counselors there trying to help their fellow community members. And these counselors, when I first showed up, none of them had formal training. Most of them didn't have any higher than a grade 5 education. Most of them spoke Inuit only, and they were doing their best. They had a lot of lived experience, and a lot of them were elders, and they had like their traditional counseling experience or like healing ways also that they used. But during my first year, one of them came up to me and basically said, hey, look, like speaking for the rest of the counselors, and said, hey, look, like we need help. Like we are doing our best, but we need more skills. We think that we can do a better job if we can get more skills. So we all got together with the counselors and we identified a training that they could take. And we sent them to this training, and they got back from the training like a couple of weeks later. And I asked, how was it? How was the training? Like, you guys are ready now to be counselors. And they were like, we literally didn't understand a word, like literally, because it was in English. And the words we did understand were like theoretical, and like we don't really care so much about the theory. We want tools that we can use. So what we did is we decided, okay, we're going to build our own counselor training program. It's going to be led by Inuit. It's going to be for Inuit. It's going to be in Inuktitut, and it's going to be based on like practical tools that we need. And the motto is going to be take the best. Take the best from all cultures. It doesn't matter where the tool's from. We're gonna use the best technique that works for us. We invited elders from the surrounding communities to teach us about like traditional healing, Inuit healing techniques. And we also invited experts from the Southern Canada, psychologists and social workers, and so that they could teach us about how their tools. At the end of the day, this was in 2005. By 2015, we had run the program more than 10 times, like different iterations of the program. Every time we ran the program, we improved the program a little bit more. And so by 2015, we were accredited. The program was officially accredited in Canada as a legit counselor training program. And now, not only people from our own community, but people from the entire territory of Nunavut were coming to take training in this program. We not only did counselor training, but we also in here, now I'm getting back to my land obsession, we also did land-based healing. Turns out that Inuit also are very connected to the land. And for them, land is healing. Being out on the land is actually healing for them and for me as well. So we designed all these land-based programs. We had a program in the summer where we would take like the entire community out and we would camp for 6 weeks. And we would do healing workshops in the morning. So when I say healing workshops, you can think of like group work. You can think of like people sitting in a group and somebody facilitating that group. And maybe the group is talking about how to heal from grief and loss or something like that, right? And then in the afternoons, we would do cultural training. So teaching, sort of relearning the culture. So relearning how to make sealskin tents, relearning how to harvest seal, relearning how to build shelters, etc. Relearning like the medicinal plants. We also did a lot of work with youth. And so we did land-based work with youth. So we had all sorts of like father and son trips out on the land with youth. We did a winter program where we would take youth out dog teaming for a month, and they would have to camp in tents in February. And by the way, in February in Clyde River, it averages between -30 and -50. So like this is a really cool experience for youth to really grow up and test their limits and really learn about their culture, because you can't survive out there if you don't know how to survive the way Inuit survive. And then also we did, as you're looking at this picture, we did a healing through hip hop project with youth, because one day while we were doing all these land-based programs, and was obsessed about the land-based program. So we would do a ton of them. One of this youth comes into me and he says, like, you guys don't do anything for us. You don't do anything for youth. And I got defensive and I said, wait a minute. We do tons of youth programming. You can go on the land. You can go on the land. You can go on the land. And he said, well, I don't know. Like, I'm not really excited about going out on the land when it's so cold. Like, I don't want to do that. And a lot of us don't want to do that. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, a lot of us work through our emotions through dance, and we do hip hop. And so I said, okay, I'll find money and to run a program, and you'll be the instructor. And so this is just a picture of one of those programs. Now I'm getting back to the point of this presentation, which is all of this work that we have been doing. You know, the land-based programs, the Healing Through Hip Hop program, the counselor training program, they all set us up so that when the government of Nunavut finally decided, hey, maybe we should create like healing programs, addictions and trauma healing programs for Nunavummiut, that's what people in Nunavut are called, for Inuit in Nunavut, maybe we should create these programs. Well, it just so happened that Ilisaqsivik and this group of people, we were perfectly positioned to create this program. We had the counselors, the trained counselors. Not only that, but we had the actual counselor training program so we could continue to train counselors. We had all of this experience. We had 15 plus years of experience running already land-based programs. So we created the first ever Inuit-led land-based addictions and trauma treatment program in, I would say in Nunavut, but probably in the world, because there aren't very many places where they speak Inuktitut. So we created that program, and now this town, Clyde River, has their own program that's run by their own people, that's delivered in Inuktitut by Inuit, that's on the land. And here they are. They ran their first program in February of this year. And people are coming now from all over the territory to participate in this program. And my message to you is that this is how change happens. It's not quick. It's a journey. It took over 17 years at Ilisaqsivik for them to get to this program. And over the course of that entire process, we didn't know that that's where we were going. We didn't have like a master plan. We didn't have a strategic plan. I'm not saying that strategic plans are bad. I'm just saying that not always does change need to be totally planned out. My message to you is that no action is too small. To follow your dreams, to be brave. You might not know why you're doing what you're doing now, but be brave. Take risks. You don't know where they'll lead you to 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And so now that's the end of my presentation. This is me on my dog team. So if you have any questions, if I can just. I'm just trying to get back into the room. There I am. Okay. I'm back. I don't know if there are any questions. If anyone is still there.
Nacho, you're here? Yeah. Yes. So thank you so much, Jake. Wait, there's a question here. Show it.
Yeah. Okay. How did you keep your hope? Okay. Well, I kept my hope because because I was working with people who have way more hope than I do. Like this organization is legit, you know, like these the Inuit in Clyde River started Ilisaqsivik because basically there was a lot of suicide, a ton of suicide in their small community. And there was one year when there were like, I don't know, 4 suicides in less than a couple months. And the community was angry because the government of Canada was sending in counselors to like fly into the community. They would stay for like a week, and often they didn't speak the language. They didn't even know where they were. They had no sort of idea of the culture, of the history, of anything. And the community was like, this is no good. It's doing more harm than good. And then all of a sudden, a group of elder women got together and said, look, like we Inuit were always like didn't depend on anyone. Like we are arguably like the strongest people in the world. Who else could live up here in the Arctic for thousands of years? Why are we depending on the government to solve our problems? We can solve our own problems. So they created Ilisaqsivik because of that. And I don't know, for me, there's like nothing more inspiring than to work for people who are that dedicated and that strong.
Here's another question. Yeah, from Jose Ignacio. I think it's already on stage.
Well, I think I got motivation.
From where did you find the motivation going?
Yeah, I got motivation from the people that I worked with, honestly, and as long as they were motivated, I was motivated to help. I had my marching orders, and it was actually easy. The other thing that kept me motivated was I started learning how to run a dog team. And when you do this kind of work, like when you're working with people and it's a lot of trauma and it's a lot of addiction and it's a small community, 800 people, and there's a lot of suicide. So like, you know, people that are committing suicide, and like it really can be difficult to sort of stay healthy yourself. And I can say that if I didn't start dog teaming, there's no way that I would have stayed there for as long as I stayed there. And I stayed there from 2004 until 2018 is when I left this organization. And dog teaming got me out on the land. You know, dog teaming gave me an excuse to go out on the land. Dog teaming also gave me a way to meet Inuit, the people that I'm working with, out on the land in a place that was, we were all more relaxed. Everybody felt more themselves. And so that's how I kept going.
Well, it's amazing. I don't know if anyone else has another question, someone who wants to come on stage. Do you hear me well, Jacob?
Yeah, I hear you. I can hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any more questions right now. So here we have another one. Here we have a new one. From Maria del Rocio. Do you think it's possible to replicate this way of approachment? Do you have a new place in mind?
The world. Yeah. I think it's totally possible to replicate the approach, because that's key. The way you ask the question, because it is an approach. It's a process. It's not a solution. Like I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't have the answer when I went to Clyde River. I didn't even know the question when I went to Clyde River, except for I knew that whatever answer was going to need to come from the people that I work with. And so anywhere else in the world, if you're working to make a better world, if you're working on community development, my process and the approach that I take is it has to be community led. It has to be grassroots. It has to be led from the bottom up. And when you're working with Indigenous communities, Inuit Indigenous communities, it has to be Indigenous led. The solutions. It doesn't come from a college course. It doesn't come from a PhD. It comes from the very people that are having the issue or need the development. The answer is going to come from them. So that's my approach, and I think that that's replicable everywhere.
Great. Well, as our co-director has been in the chat, your presentation was really, really inspiring. I think it will motivate more than one person that is present today. And I don't know if anyone else has any question, but in the meanwhile, thank you very much, Jakob, for being here today. It was great. It was great to get to know your experience. I think it's an amazing journey that most of us couldn't ever imagine.
Yeah, come visit. You're always welcome. every one of you.
I'll try to go myself. It will be really interesting, but I don't know when it will be possible.
All right.
Well, so if there is no more question, I'll end the session. Thank you very much, Jake, for being here. And thank you all for listening to this amazing talk. And see you tomorrow for another SABF day, our last day for this edition. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Ciao.